Today I'm chatting with Brother Shubamrita, one of Amma's closest disciples. How are you enjoying your stay in Ireland so far?
Oh, very much. It's always been a pleasure visiting Ireland, and every year I look forward to this opportunity.
So you're a monk. What does that mean?
Well, it means a person who has dedicated his life to spirituality and service. So basically, it's a life where we live as per spiritual ideals, and we try to also engage ourselves a lot into acts of service. So it's not much living for yourself, but it's much living for others, living for the community, living for the world.
I'm curious, why did you decide to become a monk?
To be very frank, I had no such inclinations, especially in my younger years. And all this changed after I met my master, that is Amma. And when I met her, it was really a big eye-opener for me, because I never thought that a life dedicated to selfless service and spreading compassion is possible. I thought these are only things that you read in books. But when I saw her and I experienced her presence, and I saw what she was contributing to the world, that really changed a lot in me. And I really thought that this is somebody whose whole life is an offering to humanity, and she is happy, spreading happiness around, helping so many people. And for me, this was a unique experience. It was the first time I was encountering somebody like that. That made me ponder a lot about the realities of life. And it was not like I just jumped in immediately and said, I'm becoming a monk. I took my time. I've always been a bit analytical about everything, so I need to be convinced myself. So I took a lot of time just observing her actions, observing her life. I really wanted to see that all that she says, all that she preaches is there in her actions also. And I saw that it's more in action than in words. And after a while, somehow there was this the search in me that kind of also started, wanting to know more about the realities of life. And, how can I really be happy? How can I really be peaceful in life? And somehow I found that this is something that is very close to my heart's calling, of leading a life which can also be of service to humanity. And as days passed, it grew more and more. And so finally I expressed my desire to her, if I could also be a part of the organization and dedicate myself to a life like this. She initially said that, I have to complete my studies. She said she wouldn't take me without that. So I had to wait for a few years till I completed. But to put it in a crux, it was meeting Amma that changed my whole life. Just seeing what she was giving to the world, to see somebody who has dedicated her whole life to suffering humanity, and who is kind of a total offering to service. That really changed the whole way I looked at life, and it inspired me tremendously.
Can you tell me something about living the life of a monk, and what does it mean in a spiritual way?
Well, living life as a monk, is little different from the life that we lead in the world. One thing is, in the world, you just follow what your mind says. What your mind asks you to do, you just do it. But when you lead a life of a monk, you have to, sometimes control yourself. You have to kind of, think twice before you do anything. And you also have to kind of see that you're not just blindly going, the way the mind is asking you to flow. It also is a life, where, simplicity is so important. You lead a very simple life. Your needs are very, your needs are there, but, you try to kind of curtail it to the minimum, so that, you have everything, but at the same time, you don't have anything in excess. And it's also a life where, we have to spend time, in spiritual contemplation. We have to spend time in our practices, in our studies, and also, spend a lot of time in the field, in helping others. So, yes, for a person from outside, he may feel, oh my God, this is such an austere life, and these people may be really struggling to do that. But I always feel it depends on your inclination towards it. If you really are charged up and if you really love it, there is nothing more satisfying than this. And I really feel I'm so happy that I really took up this path, and I'm more and more satisfied, and each and every day I kind of thank God for this blessing in this lifetime.
What do you think is the difference between, say, like a Buddhist monk, a Christian monk, and, like, say, a monk with Amma?
Well, the goal is the same. The goal is to know who you are in reality. The goal is to know your true nature as God. To realize the divinity in you and to see the divinity in others as well. And the goal is also serving others. I don't think there is any difference in the ultimate goal, but each path has its own tradition. So maybe the practices vary a little, as a Buddhist monk or as a Christian monk or as a Hindu monk. The practices may vary, and the kind of do's and don'ts, may be kind of different in a way that the way they are put is different. I think finally it is all, coming to the same thing, but, it may be put in a different way. But I think for a true Buddhist monk, a true Christian monk, and a true Hindu monk, the goal is just one, that is to know who you are and to serve the world.
Amma is known as the Hugging Saint.
Yeah.
Can you tell me a little about her life and the work she does?
Well, it's amazing to kind of see, and read through what she has done for the world, and to really read her life, especially, the challenges that she had to face in life. She was born in a very ordinary fisherman community in India. And right from a young age, she was very different. She had a very deep absorption in God. And right from a young age, her parents would notice that, she would sit for hours together in silence, contemplating, meditating. And when she was 3 or 4, she would compose her own songs to the divine and, be singing them in solitude. And also as she started growing up, they saw that, she had very deep compassion towards others. When she would go around the village, collecting grass for cattle and kind of, going to school, whenever she would see people suffering, she just couldn't stay away. So if it may be, it could be sometimes an old couple, not having anybody to take care of them. It could be people who were suffering because of lack of food or lack of money to buy medicines. The moment Amma would see somebody suffering, she would be there by their side, and she would do whatever she could to help them. She would sometimes bring these people home, give them a bath, take food from the kitchen, give it to them. Or sometimes she would take money from her father's pocket or take one of her mother's jewels and give it to a family that didn't have anything. And this became like a habit, and her parents were a bit worried because Amma was born in a very conservative society where girls were not supposed to mingle freely with strangers, and here was their daughter who used to, who had no problems even going into a stranger's home and inquiring about their well-being and bringing strangers home. So it didn't go well with them. They couldn't understand this. And they thought that, the best way to stop her, spiritual practices and all her service is to make her work more. If she works more, she will have less time for all this. So they stopped her schooling when she was in the 4th grade. And she had to work a lot, in her house and also in the house of her grandparents, in the house of her uncles. In a day, she was working like 16 to 18 hours at that tender age. But yet, somehow she found time to reach out to people. And also, she converted every action that she did into a spiritual practice. And she could somehow connect to God with every action that she performed. So all these efforts that her parents put to kind of take her away from the path did not work at all. And as time passed, they saw these moods in her getting more and more deep. And though initially they had a lot of opposition, slowly they also started getting some experiences in life which made them realize that that their daughter is somebody who is so extraordinary, and who is really such a boon to society. So they started understanding her more and respecting what she was doing. Slowly people around also kind of saw what they felt, what they were getting in Amma's presence, the profound peace and happiness that they felt. So there were many people who had an interest in the spiritual path. They also found in Amma a guide who could answer their questions, who could kind of dispel their doubts. And they saw Amma as really a master who could guide them. So there was a community that started forming around her. And slowly as time passed, the word spread more and more. People started flocking to really feel that peace and happiness, around Amma. And that's how the organization in fact started. And as the organization grew, of course, Amma started taking up the different humanitarian projects, that she is leading now. And one by one, she started kind of, taking up things in society where she could kind of contribute in a big way. And today, the whole organization has taken the form of a worldwide charitable mission. It's called as Embracing the World, which is a global network of all the humanitarian initiatives that have been initiated by Amma. And millions of people around the world are being benefited by her presence through all her projects. She also travels around the world, spreading the message of love and compassion. She meets people individually and gives talks, gives them the advice on how to lead one's life in a way that you can be peaceful and happy amidst all the chaos and suffering in life. And all this goes on, and she meets each and everyone individually as well. And along with it, these charities also are kind of blossoming in nearly every continent in the world. So Amma's life is something that is totally an offering to suffering humanity, and her whole her whole life is meant. I've been with her for 25 years now, and never seen her take a day's vacation. This 25 years, it's been totally an offering to helping society, helping the poor and the needy.
You mentioned there about turning action into a spiritual practice.
Yeah.
What do you mean by this, brother?
Well, when you say action into a spiritual practice, basically, you can do an action, very mechanically without really being present in the action. Most of the people do it that way. You sometimes don't like the work that you do, and you do it grudgingly, you do it mechanically without really being present there. But Amma says when you bring in love into your action, the same action can be done in a stress-free way. It becomes a joy doing that action. So one of the ways that she always recommends is to find a higher purpose to your action. When you see a higher purpose to the work that you're doing, the whole way of looking at the work changes. So at times you may feel that, I'm just imagining that there is a higher purpose. But that still works, because your whole attitude towards your work changes. So basically when Amma says, turning an action into a worship, it is basically, changing the whole attitude behind the action. Like she herself mentions in her autobiography, in her biography, that, when she would work at home, even small things would be done. She would imagine it in a very different way. Like when she would be sweeping the courtyard, her imagination would be that the Lord may arrive today at home. So when he steps in, not even a single pebble should prick his feet. So I should do it so cleanly. So she would, sweep the courtyard with this attitude. When she would dress when she would make her brothers and sisters ready for school, her imagination would be that she's adorning the forms of the Lord, and kind of, serving them. If guests would arrive at home, she would imagine that this is God who has come in another form. So for her, every action was connected to God. So through our visualization and through our imagination, and we can really change a lot in the way we see our work. If we can change the attitude behind our work, then you can see that many times it becomes a joy doing the work, and you are ready to go on, for hours and hours together. You don't feel the stress and the tiredness, and basically it makes you want to be involved in more and more. So I think a lot of things depends really on your attitude, because sometimes for some people some work is really boring, they hate it, they really somehow drag themselves through it. But for some people the same work is so much of joy, they love it, they don't feel the stress at all. It's because basically they love that thing, they love that work, while for others they just hate it. So basically unless you bring in love and a higher purpose to your work, you never really enjoy the actions that you're doing. So imagine if we could do that in every action of ours, it would be such a joy.
You mentioned the word stress. In Western society, stress is a very big word in our society.
Yeah.
Is there a way to turn action into spiritual practice? Like, how can we do that in our lives?
Well, even in our lives, I think it is possible if we sincerely try and we do our actions with this kind of an attitude. If we could somehow, kind of do our actions with love, bringing in the element of love somehow into what we are doing, it can really change quite a lot. For example, a person is in a manufacturing business, or say in a garment industry. It can be a very mechanical work, doing the job. But if he feels that, okay, this product that's going through my hand, when it reaches the customer, when he opens it, he should be happy seeing the end product. He should be happy seeing the thing that he bought, paying money. That would make him so happy. So when you think of your work that way, it gives you a higher purpose to it. So you not only do it with love, you also do it with a lot of efficiency. You're totally into the work. And you're not just saying that, oh my God, I have to do these many sets of things. But when you think of it that, oh, today I'm making 50 people happy because maybe I'm finishing 50 products, and 50 people who buy them are going to be so happy seeing it. It changes the whole way you look at your action. So I think bringing in love changes a lot, and also being present in the moment, saying that, I take every moment as it comes. I'm doing it, I'm going to do it with alertness and awareness. I'm not letting my mind be going around here and there as I'm doing this, because that's not going to help me in any way. Let me do what I have in hand in the best and the perfect way. Even if it's a very trivial thing, I should be somebody who's the best in it. Even if it's doing gardening, I would prefer to be the best gardener, ever known to the world. So let me do it with that attitude. So that makes you more and more present in the moment, and that changes the whole way you look at life. So I feel love and awareness is so very important, and if you can bring that in your daily actions, then even the most simplest action can be turned into a great action. And such actions always leave a mark, because there is so much of efficiency in it, there's so much of creativity in it.
Why do you think people in the West, and maybe even in the East as well, have such a hard time in actually being present in their lives?
Well, the thing is that, our mind loves to take us either to the past or to the future. Basically, if you really look at time, the past and the present, past and the future, these are not really parts of time, they are parts of our mind. Because in reality, the past and the future cannot be represented, you cannot bring it, right? The only thing that really exists is the present moment. So the present moment, in fact, is so small that, it can only kind of have one thought in it. But the mind doesn't want to be constricted in a space like that, because it doesn't remain to be the mind, because mind is nothing but the flow of thoughts. It loves to jog around, it loves to walk around, so it needs a wider space. So the way it loves to do is to be in the past, to be in the future, and somehow take you away from this moment. But as you train the mind to be more and more in the present, you see that, your whole way of looking at life, your whole quality of life changes quite a lot. So basically that's what you achieve also through your spiritual practices. As you kind of go more and more into the moment, you become very, very efficient. There are things in the past that kind of also distract us quite a lot, things that didn't go okay, things that went okay, and we want that to happen in the future. There are things from the past and the future that kind of distract us all the time, and asking us to go there and think more about it. It doesn't mean that you don't learn the lessons from the past, but you have to be efficient when you deal with the past and the future. That is, you take the right lessons, from the past. It may be good or bad. You take the right lessons, but the time to implement them is the present again. So you learn from the past, but you again bring it to the present. You can plan for the future. For example, I'm sure, you would want to be, suppose your goal is to be the best radio presenter in Cork. That's a great goal to have. There is nothing wrong in it. But for that to happen, your present radio shows have to be of great quality. That's how you're going to elevate yourself. So you have to bring back yourself to the present moment. So that is something that comes by awareness. You have to practice continuously to bring yourself more and more into the moment. And you see that as you are able to do that, it really helps. And I wouldn't say that it's just in the West. It's everywhere in the world. People have a problem remaining in the moment because it is the survival mechanism of the mind. The mind knows that if it remains more and more in the present, it is no longer the boss. It's going to lose its position. So it would love to be in power, and not allow us to dictate terms to it. It would always want to remain the boss. So one of the ways it does is take you to the past, take you to the future, not allow you to be much there in the moment.
Are the practices of meditation and mindfulness ways of achieving this?
Surely. It helps us quite a lot. Our practices bring us more and more to the moment. And also, I would say, alertness in the present moment. At times you really kind of introspect yourself and you see that you're not present in the action at all. So every time you catch yourself somewhere else, you bring yourself back. So all this go hand in hand, in fact, growing in awareness and spiritual practices. So whatever be the spiritual practices you do, meditation or chanting of prayers or chanting of mantras, whatever it is, the goal is to grow more and more in awareness.
And I know you mentioned about mantras there, but what's the purpose behind a mantra?
It's the same. It is to focus the mind. See, our mind has, so many distractions, and there's so many sounds that occupy our mind, and things that pull you in different directions. And what you do is you kind of replace these voices with a particular voice, the voice of the mantra or the syllables of the mantra. So when you chant the mantra, basically you are kind of substituting these thoughts with one thought. And slowly this flowing of the mind in different directions, it slowly kind of subsides and, it kind of flows in one direction. So as you go deeper into the practice, there's only one thought in the mind, which is the mantra. So slowly it makes the mind more focused. It makes the mind more one-pointed. So the goal of the mantra is just this, to make the mind focus, one-pointed and pure, so that it just flows in one direction. And as you do it deeper and, as you do it regularly in a deeper way, you see that, the flowing of the mind becomes less in different directions. And such a mind doesn't really remain a mind. If there's only one tree in a place, you don't call it a forest. If there's one drop somewhere, you don't call it a river. It's millions of drops that together constitute a river or a stream. It's thousands of trees that together form a forest. So that's how our mind is. It's just a flow of thoughts, So when you kind of curtail it to one thought, somehow it doesn't really remain the mind, Of course, you may say that still there is one. And you can go beyond that also. But it restricts, it kind of reduces the strength of the mind, the disobedient mind quite a lot. So the practice of mantra is this, to make your mind focused and one point.
In the West at the moment, mindfulness is a big buzzword. Yes. Obviously, just meditation as well. Yeah. But what's the difference between meditation and mindfulness?
In reality, there is no difference. Basically, it's different ways of putting it. Mindfulness is also a practice of awareness. You're aware of your thought, your actions, your words that you speak. So you kind of filter everything that you think, you say, you do. So you are observing yourself. Meditation is also the same, where you kind of, you become a witness to your own thoughts. You kind of observe yourself, from a distance. You observe your mind from a distance. Basically, I feel, these are just different terminologies used as per the traditions. It's mindfulness came more from the Buddhist tradition. The same thing has been explained as dhyana, as meditation in the Indian tradition, in the Eastern traditions. So basically, it is just the different names used for the same thing. I don't see it much of a difference, because people may say, okay, in meditation you are seated with your eyes closed, you're seated in one place. That's one form of meditation, but meditation can be in different ways. You can be doing an action and yet be meditating, when you're doing it with awareness, which is not different from what mindfulness teaches you. So I think it's just the different ways of putting the same thing.
And what's the goal behind meditation?
The goal behind meditation is purifying the mind and making it, fit for, the knowledge of who you are in reality. In fact, that's what meditation really does. It really makes your mind more and more subtle. So that finally, you realize that you're not just this limited entity. In fact, you are the divine. You are the embodiment of supreme consciousness. At present, our identification is just to the body, to our mind, to our intellect, to the ego. So we have a very different idea of who we are. We think we are limited in love, we are limited in strength, we are limited in in things that we can achieve. But as you meditate more and more and you go deeper into you get closer to the essence of who you are, and you realize that in fact you are the embodiment of supreme power and supreme love, and there is nothing that is different from you. In fact, there is just that oneness in the whole of creation. There is nothing other than you. It takes you to that realization. So meditation prepares the mind to take that leap, into that state of merging with the supreme consciousness.
And do you think meditation is the answer for people's unhappiness?
It is. In fact, if you can practice that in your everyday life, you can really see it for yourself. As time passes, you see the change happening in you. And, at present we hardly give ourselves any time, to kind of contemplate on how the journey of life is going. We are so busy with so many things, and just running at hectic speed from one activity to the other. It would really change a lot if people can decide to spend some time where they are not going to be running, but going to just be sitting and trying to take up the inner journey. I always say this, right from childhood, we have been told by our parents and our teachers that don't just sit, do something. We have got so accustomed to it that we also need to sometimes put it in the reverse. Don't just do something, sit. We have to sit, look deep within, contemplate, and also find that inner stillness and stability. The thing is, as we go closer to the center, as we get more and more centered inside, you would see that the whole way of looking at life changes. Your actions also become much more meaningful, much more creative. It really changes a lot in life. Many people have the feeling that if you start practicing meditation, you start doing spiritual practices, then you don't fit into the world. It's just a wrong notion. In fact, I would say it makes you more and more efficient in the world. It makes you respond to situations rather than react. It makes you more and more mature in your relationships. So it makes you grow as an individual quite a lot. You really become a true human being. Nowadays, people use the concept, they say, oh, I'm just a human being. What does that mean? You have to think that, human being is somebody who's full of weakness and frailties. That's how sometimes this term is used. But a true human being is somebody who realizes that, I have this treasure house of strength inside me. I have love inside me. And I can use it for my own welfare and also for the good of others.
Is the goal behind spirituality, is it to be more happier and peaceful in one's life, is it?
Yes, spirituality is basically, the whole meaning is to realize that, you are not just this limited entity. Your true nature is that consciousness, is that true spirit, which is, nothing but the God consciousness or the divine consciousness. So as you bring that more and more in life, you kind of grow in happiness like anything. So as people practice it or understand it more and more, life takes a very different turn. It makes them really more and more peaceful in life. Whatever happens, however difficult be the situations, yet you are able to face it without losing your mental strength. You are able to kind of see through it without really crumbling down. Nowadays in the world, you can see people, even the smallest pressures become too much for them to handle. They don't have the mental strength to do that. But as you understand spirituality, you become more and more equanimous to situations. And you are able to kind of, you're able to handle such situations, such pressure situations in a much better way without really losing yourself or without losing hope and strength. And it really helps tremendously. But people have to practice it, and it's something that they will feel it for themselves. I always say, the initial phase is the most tricky thing, to keep up the practice, to really be able to kind of see through it. Because when you start doing, sometimes you may just imagine that, in 2 days everything is going to change. It's not that quick. It takes a while. You just have to have the perseverance to practice it for a few days or for a few months. And you can, if you really introspect and see, you see the changes that happen inside you. And once you get the taste of it, then, you will, not leave it for anything. You would just want to kind of make it a priority in your life. So I think it really helps, quite a lot. And I really feel it's not something that's just meant for a few people. It's something that really needs to be, accepted universally for the good of everything. Always says there are two kinds of education. She says there's education for living and education of life. Education for living is getting a degree, going for higher studies, getting a job, taking care of your family. That is important in one way. But education of life is also important, which teaches you about realities of life. What is the purpose of this birth that you have? What are your capacities? How can I be mature with my emotions? How do I go beyond the limitations that I have and realize this strength and love that I carry inside me? This knowledge is also important. So unless this knowledge is also blended with the other knowledge, our education never becomes complete. So it is important to know what spirituality is if our goal is peace and happiness. And I think that's the goal of every human being. Behind every action, that's the goal, to be peaceful and happy. Sometimes we search for it in the wrong place.
One thing I noticed when I was in India last year, that even the very, say, extremely poor people were very happy. Mm-hmm. However, like in the West, like there's many people who are very rich and say famous, and they can at times be very, very unhappy. So, like, why do you think this is?
Well, I always say that you see suffering, amongst the rich and the poor, and the only difference is that the rich can choose how to suffer. The poor have no choice, but the rich can choose how to suffer. Basically, it's the difference, the way you look at things. Like you can see that whatever you have externally, it doesn't really fulfill the sense of lack in you. You may always think that, a little more and I'm going to be happy, I'm going to be fulfilled. It just shows you that it is the nature of the world. Nothing external can really make you totally happy and content. The source of real happiness and contentment is inside us. And unless you find that, whatever you have externally, it will only lead you to more and more, wanting to add to it. They call it the 99 club. If you have 99 euros, you think 100 would make you happy. If you have 999, you would think 1000 would make you happy. It just goes on and on. It just leads to more and more craving. A little more and I'm going to be happy. So this just goes on and on. That's why, you see that maybe I wouldn't say every rich person is like that, because there are people who have a very good understanding and they are able to manage their wealth and resources in the right way. But unless you have this kind of an understanding that real happiness is inside me, and I shouldn't just be, depending on it in the external world, because the external world is changing all the time. So you are kind of expecting happiness from a thing or a person who is changing every moment. Our bodies are changing, our minds are changing, our decisions are changing. Everything is in a moment of change. Like the great philosopher Heraclitus says, you never step into the same river twice. Every time you step into a river, the waters are different. So everything is in a process of change, and we are trying to find happiness in this changing world. But you can never do that. It would be like dancing on a stage that's shaking all the time. So the real way to find happiness is also to kind of look within and say that it's inside. Of course, our external needs are important. I'm not saying that, we shouldn't have money or we shouldn't have needs. And it is important to kind of, satisfy our needs. But at the same time, to have this understanding that just by adding on more and more, it's not going to make me happy in any way. I need to be content, and I need to search for it in the right place. And also to understand that happiness is also in giving, in sharing. So once this understanding comes, then you see that the whole way you look at life changes. In India, of course, we have had a very rich spiritual tradition. There is a lot of need, there is the need of food, clothing and shelter, and a lot of people suffer because of that. And I really feel that all these needs need to be looked after, because you cannot advise spirituality to a hungry person. His needs are more, you have to take care of his needs first. But giving that along with the other needs, with the other things is also important. To give them the food, to give them clothing, to give them shelter, to give them the material needs that they need for survival. But at the same time also teaching them how to be happy and content in life. Because if that other part is missing, then how much ever you have, you're not really going to be happy. So I feel that's the thing, because people think that real happiness lies in in adding more and more to you, but real happiness never lies there. It's somewhere deep inside you, and you search for it in the wrong direction.
You heard before that saying that all unhappiness is a result of comparisons. Do you think this is true?
It is true. We compare quite a lot, and that leads to a lot of problems. It's like you talk to a person, and he has a dream of buying a car which would cost him these many thousands of euros, and you see him working hard to get the car. The day he gets the car, he's so happy. He's driving around, he may invite his friends for a ride and things. But maybe after a few months, you see the same person a bit desperate, a bit frustrated, and you ask him, what happened? And he might say, my neighbor has a better model than mine, or has a better car than mine. So when I look at my neighbor's car, my car makes me feel so sad. So the same car that was causing him happiness became the cause of sorrow after a while. So we do it all the time. We kind of keep comparing ourselves with others, and it really leads to a lot of unhappiness in life. We are all very unique in God's creation. We don't really need to fall into this comparison trap. We all have enough that God has given us. We just need to be focused on it. And if you can do that, life becomes a beautiful journey, because, things that I am good at, maybe, you may not be able to do that. Things that you can do, I may not be able to do that. So there is a lot of diversity in this world. It's not that everybody can do the same things. So to enjoy your talents, your capacities, you use it in the best way. It makes you so happy rather than comparing it with somebody. I always tell students, When you are 18, you're always thinking of what others are thinking about you. Isn't it? You see it a lot in youngsters. You're always thinking, what is he thinking about me? Or what is she thinking about me? By the time you're 40, you don't give a darn to what others are thinking about you. You're so busy with your own thing, you just go ahead. By the time you're 60, you realize that nobody has been thinking about you at all. So we don't need to wait till 60 to get there. So this comparison trap is again something that really puts you into a lot of unhappiness. We just need to be aware of it and say that I'm not doing this. My life is unique. It's a gift from God. And I'm not going to compare this gift with somebody. It's a gift of love, and I'm not going to say that this gift is better than the other. We are all unique in God's creation. Let us enjoy our uniqueness. Let us celebrate our uniqueness.
And what is love?
Well, that's the thing that can only be experienced and can never be put in word. In India we have a beautiful saying that, one who has really deciphered what love is has become love. They say that in the way you write it in the Indian, in the Devanagari script, it's 2.5 letters. That half letter is never complete. So they say that is something that has to be experienced. Love is nothing but our true nature. Love is nothing but acceptance. Love is nothing but fulfillment. It's nothing but compassion. It can be put in different words, but finally it is experience.
What stops us from loving unconditionally?
What really stops us from loving unconditionally is our selfishness. Basically, the thought that I and mine, are so important and everything else comes later. That is what really kind of, makes us keep things for ourselves and not kind of allow ourselves to flow towards others. It's basically the thought that, if I kind of give this, or if I share this, or if I express this, I am becoming a little lesser, in my, in the quantity that I really have. It's a very wrong thought. It's basically our ego, our selfishness that makes us think that way. Basically, as we think that, getting more and more for ourselves will make us happy, you see that, always there is some kind of a conditionality in the love that you express. Because even if I give you love, I expect this and this in return, But in true love, you realize that, there is no such conditions. You just love for the sake of loving. You're not expecting anything, from me in return. You're just giving your love because, that's what makes you happy and that's what is your nature. So to rise up to that level is, of course, a great challenge. It doesn't come easily. You have to kind of somehow have the right understanding to grow. At present, our circles of love and compassion are very, very constricted. Maybe towards us the most, and then maybe towards our near and dear ones. Slowly we have to make it grow. It has to grow towards, our neighbors, towards society, towards the country, towards the whole world. It just has to encompass the whole creation. It takes a while. Basically, as Martin Buber puts it, he says that initially the love is between I and it, where you don't see the other person as really as a human being. You see it as an object. He puts it as I and it, And he says this is like the love that you see in the world quite a lot. People use others, just for their own thing. And once they feel that this person cannot give me any more, then just like an object, once you've used it and it's no longer useful, you just, throw it away. So that kind of love is something that we see a lot in the world. The second kind of love is between, I and you. He says, where it's like you have love for the other, but it's kind of a give and take thing. I will give you love, but in return, I also need this, and this. So this love is much better than the first kind, between I and it. But it also has a lot of limitations to it. It's because, again, there is I and there is you. There are two very distinct entities. Spiritual masters take it to a different realm. They say the third kind of love is not I but you. That's a very pure kind of love where I don't think much about myself. I just think about you. I'm just giving. So when two people have that attitude, it becomes beautiful, the relationship. Not I but you. But they also say there's a highest kind of love, which is not I, not you. That is the state where this I and you, have kind of the identification to the I and you have completely kind of been transcended. And you realize that there is just oneness. So that is the state where, true Mahatmas, they really operate. Because they don't see anything as different from them. They see just themselves in everything. So as a result of which, you just flow. When Jesus says, love your neighbor as yourself, he is pointing out to this oneness. You see yourself in the neighbor. That's when that love becomes complete. So it is that state of oneness that leads to total love. Till then, of course, there is a lot of selfishness that you see in love.
And is that enlightenment, is it?
Enlightenment is nothing but understanding that, that my true nature is love. My true nature is that consciousness. There is nothing other than me. In fact, everything in this creation is permeated with that same consciousness. That is enlightenment, where you kind of enlighten yourself to a very different realm. It's not something that happens from outside. People may kind of imagine it as something that comes from the sky and descends in you. These are just things that artists do, sometimes to give an idea as to how these things can be presented. It's all inside us. It's just a journey of finding it right inside.
And how do you know if you're enlightened or not?
The way you know is you become an ocean of peace and happiness. The way you look at the world, it's not that the world disappears or you are taken to a different world. The way you look at the world completely changes. You are so peaceful, no situation disturbs you. You become an embodiment of love and compassion, and others also start feeling it as they kind of come in company with you. They also experience it more and more. And your mind just becomes like an ocean of bliss. There is no ripples there. It's just, it's just calm. It's just peaceful inside. Nothing can disturb such a person. This experience automatically, of course, there is no person to say I am realized there, because you have become one with it. There is no identity as such. So, it's always dangerous when somebody says I am a realized person, because he is somehow maintaining still the identity that I am different from the other. In fact, once you realize, you don't need to make any claims. That's what you see with true masters. They never make any claims.
Well, what's the biggest lesson you've learned in spirituality in your own life?
Well, there have been only lessons that I have learned from spirituality. Basically, spirituality is something that has taught me, so much about myself. When I started my life, and as I grew up, I always felt I was somebody who was limited by this name, by the position, by my strength, by my weakness and all these things. And spirituality, as I understood more and more, I started understanding that there are so many aspects to me that I don't know at all. In fact, I have this strength and this love inside me, which I feel was lacking totally, and I have to find it somewhere else. I realized it more and more that, I just have to tap into myself, and it is there for me to experience. And, it has also taught me to kind of take every situation as a stepping stone, every experience as a stepping stone. Because, life conveys to us lessons all the time. And there is something in it for us to learn and so that we can become more mature in life. But sometimes we don't take these lessons properly. I always say life is a very unique teacher. It always gives us the exams first and the lessons later. It is very different from the normal university where you get the lessons first and the exams later. But life always gives us the exams first and the lessons later. But every lesson that you learn from it, has so much to kind of contribute towards your growth and maturity. So spirituality has also taught me how to see life, with a very different perspective. Whatever be the situation or experience that you go through, if you really can use it in the right way, it can all lead towards your growth. Nothing can stop you. So it has taught me that there are no mistakes, but only lessons in life. Also, it has taught me that, real happiness is in giving, and real happiness is in never hoarding things. It is always in giving. The more you give, the more you are happy. Amma puts it beautifully. She says, it is, our hearts are like a parachute. She says it's very dangerous if it does not open. So, unless our heart opens, it never kind of gives you it never makes you truly happy in life. There have only been lessons that I have learned in spirituality.
I know your tour in Ireland is Celebrate Your Life. Isn't that the name?
Yeah.
A lot of people in Ireland at the moment are going through maybe a challenging time in regard to an economic point of view, but how can we apply that or that kind of celebration even when things aren't going so well in our lives?
I can really, understand and see that in Ireland, with the economic recession and, all the things that have happened in the last few years, many people are really struggling in life, and sometimes, they feel a kind of a lack of hope, a lack of strength. And one of the ways, of kind of encountering it is to somehow be able to keep up the mental strength, to keep up the focus, and not lose the optimism in life. So I basically, discuss in these talks of different situations in life. I talk about people who may be in the most difficult situations, but at the same time, just by the way they look at life, they have decided that they are not going to kind of suffer. They are going to celebrate life. Even though they are in this difficult situation, they are going to celebrate their existence. On the other hand, you also have people who have everything, so-called material abundance, but still, can never celebrate life. They kind of moan quite a lot about their existence. So basically, it may not really depend on the external conditions totally. I can understand that external conditions contribute quite a lot, but it doesn't depend on that totally. See, we cannot control everything that happens to us, but we can surely control things that happen inside us. And that's what spirituality really teaches you. You may not be able to change the situation externally straight away, but you can surely change the way you look at it, the way you accept it. So in my talk, I talk about, things as to how attitude is so important, the way you look at a situation and you learn from it. If you have the right attitude, then, you may be going through, a lot of pain, but you don't suffer. As the saying goes, that pain is inevitable, but suffering is optional. So if that has to happen, our attitude has to be right. I also talk about being a witness in life, being a witness to the roles that you play and not kind of, become too identified to it. When you can see your role distinctly and not see, you and the role to be one, then, it kind of makes you much more efficient in dealing with crisis. The third thing I also talk about is cultivating the way of letting go. Letting go hurt sentiments, letting go wrong kind of attachments, letting go the strong likes and dislikes. And the fourth thing I kind of discuss about is also not to forget the small things in life that bring us so much joy and which all add up to make life a celebration. So I feel these are things that, that each person, can contemplate and find a lot for himself or herself. Of course, these are things that have been advised to us by great masters of all traditions, and we just need to sometimes reflect on it a little more, especially in such situations.
I know you've spent a lot of time teaching in the West, brother. Like, what would you see as the biggest lesson that we need to learn in the West?
Well, I would say that one thing that I've been observing quite a lot in the West is people sometimes kind of, degrading themselves quite a lot, putting themselves down quite a lot. And this leads to a lot of suffering in life. And, my advice would be, that should be something that we should surely avoid. Never degrade yourself, never look down upon yourself. And this kind of feeling that I am inferior, to others and things like that, it makes life sometimes, really so difficult. As Eleanor Roosevelt puts it, she says that nobody can make you feel inferior without your permission. So my advice would be that let us not do that. We are all unique. We are all the representatives or embodiments of God or the Supreme Consciousness. So let us not kind of put ourselves down in any way. Let us rise up to our true worth. And let us not kind of allow the past to weigh on us, in a way that it doesn't allow us to kind of grow. If I have a chance of saying a second thing, I would say that one thing that I feel that would change a lot, in the lives of people is if, they come out of their lives and kind of share it more with others rather than living as isolated islands. Because being from the East, that's one great thing I see. In the West, sometimes you see people tend to live like isolated islands. But, when you kind of live like beads on a chain, it makes life much more simpler and much more happier. When you can share your life with others, when you have a community feeling, and you're not just living for yourself, but you're also kind of sharing it with others, then however difficult the situation be, life becomes a joyful experience because, you live as a community, you live as a whole. And that really changes also quite a lot. And that's something that, for me, I felt that, could change. I mean, there are countries that are very different, I mean, I've had beautiful experience of Irish families getting together, and I really enjoyed that in Ireland and countries like Italy. But there are countries where sometimes I feel there is a lot of alienation, a lot of isolation. And loneliness is also a big challenge in the West. I feel people are sometimes too lonely, and they really don't know where to go to, and they don't kind of have that feeling that this is a person whom I can go and kind of unburden myself. I think for this we all have a responsibility. We need to look around us, and kind of at least put an effort to reach out to such people and see in any way that we can help them. It may be a few words, or it may be a small gesture or a kind look. We can really kind of bring about a lot of change in their lives. That is something I see a lot of people suffering from, not knowing, where to go, not feeling a sense of belonging. And this really kind of makes so many people, feel so sad in life, and, kind of leads them to a state of hopelessness. I think that is also something that we need to awaken to. I always think, whenever there is a natural disaster happening, like the earthquake in Nepal happened, or the tsunami happened in Japan, in the floods in Philippines, or the tsunami in India. It was beautiful to see the whole world responding as one, as one community. The whole world, kind of tried to reach out in whatever way they could to help the people. But in the same way, there are such tsunamis happening around us all the time, in families around us, in people around us, who may be looking for help, who may be, waiting for a kind gesture from our part. We have to somehow, rise up to that occasion as well, to also kind of pay heed to these small disasters that are happening around us all the time. That can really, change the life in society quite a lot.
What's Amma's fundamental message to the world from your years of being with her?
Her fundamental message is love and compassion. and she always stresses that these are qualities that should be priorities in our life, and we need to be loving, be compassionate, and also realize that that I am love, I am compassion. That is my true nature. As I said earlier, love and compassion become complete in the vision of oneness. That is, when you realize who you are, then you realize that there is unity in the whole of creation. And once you realize unity, love and compassion becomes a natural flow. You don't have to be loving and compassionate. You don't have to act loving and compassionate. It just becomes you, because it just starts flowing through you. So basically her message is love and compassion. And she says we also need to put in efforts to know who we are in reality, which will make this love and compassionate so natural. And as more and more people realize this, it would be so beautiful on this planet.
That's great, brother. Thank you very much. And I suppose finally, if people want to find out more about Amma's work, how can they do it?
They could surely, log on to our websites. We have websites in every country that we are functioning. We also have, international websites called as embracingtheworld.org. And we also have, the website in India, which is called as amritapuri.org. We have a website in Ireland, which is called as ammaireland.org. So through different, sources like this, they can learn a lot about Amma's work, her life, and her mission. And I would also like to say that Amma comes to Ireland, once in 2 years. Unfortunately, this year is the turn of other countries that she kind of, sometimes takes turns with Ireland. So she will be in Dublin in 2016. And this year, I think the closest place is London. So if people would want to kind of visit her, they are most welcome. Amma meets each and every person coming to her. Thousands of people come to her daily. She meets each and every one, gives them a hug, listens to what they have to say, gives them guidance, makes them sit near her. There are days when she sits 20 to 24 hours at a stretch. She doesn't get up until she has met the last person. So you can surely come and experience her for yourself. And you're not just seeing her from a distance, you're also meeting her personally. Also in Amma's presence, there is no feeling of religion or nationality or language. The only thing that you feel in her presence is that pure love and that profound peace. And this love has changed so many lives in the world, and it could also mean a lot to you as well. I never found anybody so accessible in this world like Amma, Here is somebody whom you can come and relate to straight away. And you don't really need an appointment for that. And she's all the time available for people who want to see her. So this is something that, you can come and experience for yourself. It is very hard to explain how that experience is going to be, because words really fall short. It's something that you have to experience for yourself. Just as you asked me, what is love? You just can remain silent and just smile. That's the experience, because it's an inner experience. So that is the same thing with Amma's presence. So those who would like to meet her can really come and meet her for themselves. Or if you happen to travel in Europe or any other parts of the world, or you happen to come to India and Amma is there, you're most welcome to come and see her.
That's great. Thanks very much, brother.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much for having me on this show. It has been a pleasure talking.
Same to you. Thank you very much.
Thank you.